Okay, here we go. Wednesday night, Halacha to this meeting once again. Thursday night, at least for the summer. We'll see what happens next year. Um, these Halacha topics, I really enjoy these Halacha topics. They're fun. And the problem is that, well, it's not really a problem, but there's like no end. There's no end to them. You can just keep going on and on and on. And it's very hard to be makatzer. It's very hard to kind of narrow things down. Um, but we will explore this topic and we'll see how long that takes us to do. So the topic is knife on your table. Should you have, are you allowed to have, is it okay to have, is it proper to have a knife on your table when you're going to bench? That is the topic. So we have a bunch of sources here. Some of these sources we have looked at before. In fact, probably all of the sources we've seen before. I don't mean these specific sources. I mean these particular svarim. Yeah, you can say that's good. You can say whatever you want. Then whatever's easier. I think we've seen everything. I don't think there's any new sources. I like whenever I can to find some obscure source or some new site that we've never looked at together. But pretty sure everything on the source sheet today we have looked at some point, which is okay. But in any event, here we go. So we're going to start on the right side of the source sheet with the Beis Yosef, and then from there we'll move to the Shulchan Aruch, same person, two different books, but same person. So the Beis Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Karo, we read about him pretty much every single week. I don't know how you could really shukayach. Thank you very much. Okay, good. Thank you. I don't know how you could have a halacha share without learning something from Yosef Karo. It's probably not possible. If it is possible, it's probably illegal. So we're gonna have tonight two, and sometimes we've done even three. Sometimes we've done more sources. We're gonna have the Beis Yosef and then followed by the Shulchan Aruch. Beis Yosef, Yosef Karo was born in Toledo, Spain in 1488. He was a Spaniard. Did he participate in the running of the bulls? Don't know. Probably not. Probably had better things to do with himself, like learn the entire Torah off by heart. And he traveled a lot. I think he was in Greece at some point. He was all over the place. And he passed away in Svas in 1575, which is where he's buried, the famous Jewish cemetery over there with the different blue graves. He's near the Arizal. And apparently there are certain things where he disagreed with the Arizal on certain halachas. And how could you disagree with the Arizal? And rumor has it that apparently, at least in one area that I'm aware of, after the Arizal passed away, they say the Beis Yosef changed his mind and went like the Arizal. But some say that no, that he never changed his mind. It's that he didn't know about what the Arizal said about a specific issue. In any event, here's the Beis Yosef, which is commentary in the Torah. And again, the topic is having a knife on your table. Kosovo rikech b'simin shilam base. Mechasin sakin b'shas birkas al. You're supposed to cover the knife when you bench. You have a knife on the table. I assume it means pashtus means the bread knife, the knife that you use. Why else would you have a knife? You don't need a knife to eat with. The knife obviously is to cut the bread. You eat with a knife?
Well, you could have your
Normal
knife.
people don't eat with a knife.
Some people don't use their knives.
They didn't eat dessert. These kind of people didn't eat dessert. They didn't butter their bagels with a special butter knife. They didn't do that. They were like holding in a different world. Like they say about Mendel Futterfass, the famed Lubavitcher Chassid who spent like 12 years or something in Siberian prison camps, imprisoned by our dear friends, the Soviets. And he eventually, Baruch Hashem, escaped and joined his family in London and then in Kar Chabad, or maybe it was the other way around. And used to come to New York every year for Tishrei to be by the Rebbe. And he was a famed, known mashpia, like a spiritual mentor. And he used to bring all night for hours. And they say that once they brought him before davening a coffee and a piece of cake to give himself a little bit of energy for davening. He looked at it, coffee, cake, like, well, took the cake, put it into the coffee, spoon smashed it out, and drank the whole thing. It wasn't in his mind like cake, well, coffee separately goes the same place. Anyway, I'm pretty sure the Beis Yosef did not use a butter knife to butter his bagels. Anyway, it says like this: you're not allowed to have a knife, which again presumably means the knife to cut the bread. While else, what other knife would there be? I think on the table. You have to cover it. Why? Al shame, because the pasuk says lo sanif aleihem barzel. Pasuk says don't wave over them, don't place over them barzel, iron. Talking about the mechilta. Eino din sheyom from katzel amayich. It's talking about the mizbeach, the altar. And the Mechilta says, Eino din sheyonif hamakatzer al hamayich. It doesn't make sense. You should wave something which shortens, i.e., shortens life, steel, a sword, a knife. Don't wave it over something that's mayrich, something that extends your life, i.e., the mizbeach, the altar. How does the altar extend your life? Well, simply put, because a person can bring a carbon and get kapara, get atonement for a sin that they did, thereby lengthening their life. The shulchan mizbeach, and the table is compared to a mizbeach, to an altar. Therefore, you don't want to have a knife on the table, at least when you bench, at least. Shil chagiga, end of the Masech chagiga. Also, the Vudraham writes this. We actually never brought from the Vudraham any of this shiurim. We'll have to do that at some point. Hashem. That's what I want to get to. This likewise is written in the Shibboleh Haleket. Shibboleh Haleket lived in the 13th century in Italy. Tzidkiah ben Avraham. I don't know what his last name was or exactly what the function of last names was in the 13th century exactly, but in any event, that was his name, Tzidkiah ben Avram, and he wrote the Shibboleh Haleket, which is effectively I guess a collection, of more than a collection, but it's a collection basically of Mekayres of Halacha. So he writes the following: Mipi hachover Reb Simcha, in the name of Reb Simcha. Who's Reb Simcha? Probably Simcha ben Shmuel of Speyer, 13th century, also in Germany. He was one of the Bali Tosfos. So Reb Simcha writes, he says, Shamaiti, I heard from my friend, from the great Reb Simcha, one of the Bali Tosfos, Tam Acher, a different reason. In addition to this reason of not having an iron, a sword, a knife on the table, which is compared to the altar, one thing shortens life, the other lengthens life. Another kind of crazy meiser. Once a certain person, a certain individual, you know about this?
I heard something like, but I didn't know who it was.
Yeah, it doesn't say who it was. None of this farm I saw say who it was.
I heard, I didn't know who said this.
Now you know. A certain individual, presumably a great tzaddik, a great righteous person, was saying Birkas Hamazon, Birkas Boine Yerushalayim, when he reached the brach of Boine Yerushalayim, and he thought to himself, Oy Gevayat. Yerushalayim is destroyed. We have the Churban coming from Tisha B'Av. There is no Beis HaMikdash. There is no Yerushalayim. V'niskar Churban Abayis. He remembered the destruction of, we're saying, Uvenei Yerushalayim. And he remembered, he thought to himself, obviously means he much more than remembered. He felt it in his kishkes. Lokach Hasakin, he took the knife right off the table, V'tokei bebitno, and stabbed himself in the stomach, killing himself on the spot. And therefore, we take it away off the. Notice that carefully the word. Does it say to cover? No. Take it off. What's covering going to help you?
I always hear take it away. Never heard the cover.
Well, out of sight, out of mind.
You're saying
So
covering.
cover it, I'm saying, yeah.
Hold that thought. Hold the thought. So you should take it off the table. Well, because if you cover it, if I feel bad about the chol, I'm still going to take the knife.
You can get up and get a knife also.
Okay, it's true. You can do a lot of things.
Right.
We can't account
You're going to
for
go that
every,
far to stab
we
yourself.
can't count.
Right?
We can't account for
Get out of
everything.
your seat.
Listen, if you're Shalom Melech, you can fall on your sword.
Yeah.
Okay, a different story. So therefore, we remove it. Davke b'shas habrach. Now we understand why he brought it at the beginning of the Beis Yosef to remove it davke for benching. Why not the whole meal? No, because it's only when you bench and you say the bracha
You're
v'nei
reminded.
Yerushalayim, you're going to start to feel bad in your kishkes about the churban, So take it off the benching.
Why a knife specifically?
How else are you going to kill yourself?
Well, fork.
I don't know if
Then it's
they
worse.
Stick a fork in it.
No, I'm just saying there are other things that if you want to use it as a weapon, that it's not just a knife.
You put a cork. That's why I put a cork on the end of the fork.
Yeah, but You know,
Spoon.
ask me serious.
A blunt spoon. So the answer, it's a fair question.
It's
It's a fair
getting
question.
painful.
The answer is that generally speaking, a gezeira of Chazal, it's not a gezeira, but minhagim and gezeiros and halachas and things like this typically are whatever they are, and then we don't take it further. Meaning, in a sense, it's like everything is dangerous. Crossing the street is dangerous. Going in a car is dangerous. Going in an airplane is dangerous. Cars much more dangerous than an airplane. People think airplanes are more dangerous. Really, cars. Everything is dangerous. Swimming is dangerous. Running is dangerous. Eating is dangerous. God forbid you could choke. Chas v'shalom. So we should outlaw everything. But I guess there has to be some framework for what was likely, and especially according to the second reason of, well, I think especially according to the second reason, you're not going to stab yourself with a fork or a blunt spoon. Could you? Of course you could. You could do a lot of things. You could also bring a bomb to the table,
You're probably not gonna kill yourself. You probably injure yourself.
and you look like a
Fork.
fool. You look like a fool doing it.
Yes.
Anyway. B'shnei time meilu ksub barchas chaim. Fine. V'noyegim concludes the Beis Yosef. B'shabbos v'yamim tov b'shaloi l'chasos hasakin. You change the verb. Before it was lasalke, to remove it. Now we change to covering it. But on Shabbos and Yom Tov we don't cover it. We don't cover it. That's only according to the first reason. It's only according to the first reason of it's the makatzer and the ma'irich. It shortens life. But according to the second reason, v'tam rib simcha ein l'chalik ben Shabbos l'chol. There's no difference to Shabbos the weekday. If you feel bad about the churban, you're going to kill yourself either way. V'kol mokum. Here's important words. Min hagan sheyisrael teirahi. That we don't cover the knife on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Even though seemingly we still have a problem according to the reason of the simcha that maybe a person will commit suicide, God forbid. The minhag is not to cover it on Shabbos and Yom Tov, and minhagan sheyisrael teirahi takes on the status of Torah, therefore we're not worried about it, Shabbos Yom Tov. Maybe there is a concern, like you said, maybe you're gonna, okay, this concern is because this Shabbos also, right? No, they says, okay, minhag yisrael Torah. Okay, good. That's the Beis Yosef, according to Shabbat Halakit. Now let's jump to the left side. Here's the Beis Yosef again, the Shulchan Aruch. Simon Kuf Pei, Halacha Hey. He writes, Noigim lachasois. Notice, to cover, not to remove, but lachasois hasakim b'shas bekas hamozoi. We know why. Now we know why you do that, because of the ma'irich and the makatzer, the mizbeach and the lengthening light. Cover it when you bench, v'noagu. And the common practice is, the custom is, shaloi l'chasois b'Shabbos v'Yom Tov, period, straight to the point. No need to cover it on Shabbos and Yom Tov. So apparently we're not so concerned about the suicide guy. I'm not so concerned anyone else is going to do that. Otherwise, we would say you have to cover it or remove it on Shabbos also. Okay. Unless you want to say maybe that Shabbos and Yom Tov there's no real, you don't feel Avelus in the same way. There's no Avelus public on Shabbos and Yom Tov, and so maybe you don't feel it the same way. Okay. Let's take a look at the next verse, the Be'er Hativ. The Be'er Hativ is on the page of the Shulchan Aruch.
Maybe not like bloodlet on Shabbos either. Like, someone's not going to cut themselves because full Shabbos.
Okay, maybe.
Maybe.
I don't know. Interesting. Okay, now there's a long Taz over here on this Machaber, the Shulchan Aruch, but instead of the Taz, to save space and time, I just went straight to the Be'er Hativ. I was going to quote the Taz. The Be'er Hativ, there's actually, if you open up the Shulchan Aruch, there's 4 parts of Shulchan Aruch, right? 4 books of the Shulchan Aruch. There's actually 5 books. The 5th book is not printed. Did you know that? There's Orach Chaim, you know this, what I'm talking about. There's Orach Chaim, right? That's daily life. Tefillah, Hilchos Shabbos, etc. There's Yoredeya, which are typically what's studied for smicha, the standard, let's call it the entry-level smicha, if you will. Huh?
Like it's heter.
It's heter, right? Kashrus, what happens if you use the milchik knife or spoon with your fleshik food, etc. You have Even Ezer is like the laws of marriage and so on and so forth. And Chosh Mishpat are like monetary laws. There's a 5th book that's not printed, which is the book of common sense. They don't give you that when you get smicha. Hopefully you have it. If you don't have it, then yeah. So there are on the page of the Shulchan Aruch is the Be'er Hativ. Now there are two Be'er Hativs actually. There are two Be'er Hativs. One is on Orach Chaim and Even HaEzer. That is one author. And there's a different, when you see Be'er Hativ in Choshen Mishpat and Yeridea, that's a different person. I don't really know why they called it the same name, but that's what they called it. But in any event, this Be'er Hativ in our Sefer, which we're learning now is Orach Chaim, was Yehuda ben Shimon Ashkenazi, and he was from Poland. The other Be'er Hativ was also from Poland, by the way, and he died 1743. So he writes like this: Hasakin. I'm on the first line. On the right, is like you see a little bit of different font. That's just another one of the things on the page that get snapped up in the picture when I take a picture on Oitzer Chacham. Be'er Hativ Hasakin Dalet Hasakin. The barza makatzer you may hold them, because iron shortens the life of man. It's a knife, a sword, it kills people, God forbid, shortens the life of man. So it doesn't belong, it's pasnished, it doesn't belong on the table. Why not? Because the table is compared to a mizbech, to the altar, which extends the life of man, as we saw in the Beis Yosef. The Tom base, a second reason. He's makatzer over here. Some certain person reached the bracha b'nei Yerushalayim. V'nizkar churban habayis v'tokas hakim bebitno. He stabbed himself in the stomach. Right. So he just recapped the Beis Yosef. This is familiar to us. Because of Taz, the Taz writes on the page of the Shulchan Aruch, the exact same page where this Be'er Hativ is. This ma'isa that happened, he says, when the guy killed himself, was during the weekday. Therefore, they said that it only applies during the weekday. Interesting. What happened the weekday? Like, so what? You can, a person, God forbid, is going to take their life. God, they could do what's the difference day of the week it makes. It doesn't matter. It's interesting. This Maisa happened during the weekday. So they were only concerned during the weekday. So Shabbos is fine. You could leave it on the table on Shabbos. Like, so what? The Maisa happened on a Tuesday? Also, only Tuesdays. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe the pshat is what I was suggesting before. Maybe. Because on Shabbos, you don't feel the churban. Shabbos is a day, it's elevated. It's not, there's no mourning on Shabbos. I don't know. Maybe that's the relevance. It happened during the weekday. That's meaning maybe it could only happen during the weekday. I don't know if that's the pshat here.
Yeah, but if, according to both of these, according to the first reason, the second reason wouldn't matter if you had the knife on the table the whole meal and then you had to cover it. But according to the first one, because of the mizbeach, the knife, why could you ever have a knife on the table even while you're not benching?
It's a fair question. It's a fair question. No? Anybody? What does it belong on the table at all? If it's like a mizbeach, doesn't belong on the table at all.
Well, the other one connects it to benching, the other one connects it
Other one's
to,
connected in terms of the bench.
so that's the end, but
That's
that,
right. So it could be that it's just a pragmatic issue. You need a knife. Why do you need the knife? Because you're supposed to say a bracha on a kikar shlema, on a whole loaf. Right? If you have a whole loaf and a slice of bread, according to halacha, it's preferable to use the whole loaf, unless you want
right.
the whole ma'aseh tzemach tzedek. You know this ma'aseh? Did I say this ma'aseh before? Like I said this ma'aseh once. That the tzemach tzedek once, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, came, I don't remember where he was, a group of misnagdim. The opponent wanted to test him. They sat at a table. Everyone knows who's ever learned Hilchos Brachos. But Hilchos Brachos is amongst what, the easiest or the hardest halachos? I would say it's amongst the hardest halachos. The basics, yeah, and apples are eights. I get that. But once you move past that,
Yeah.
but brachos can become very quickly. You get into the deep end, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is very complicated. So they wanted to test him. They put out on the table all sorts of foods, eights and adamas and shahakals and nuts and pomegranates and breads and crackers and all. And see, not only what bracha do you say, but also the order. Oh my gosh, the order gets very complicated. And on the bread, on the table was a loaf of bread and a slice of bread.
No Shabbos?
No,
So
what?
I don't know. We're not vodka during the
You make
week.
the bracha.
For love.
Yeah, if you have, you should make a bracha on
If
the
you have
shoulder.
a hole, you're supposed to make on the hole versus.
So he gets up, washes his hands, onto Sedayim, comes back, takes the slice, eats the slice. They say, we got you. Huh?
Today is the night.
Oh, so he says, no. you never intended me to eat the loaf.
You
And they
know,
said, you're right, but how did you know that? There's no knife on the table. You don't just, it's not mentioned to just tear open the bread. You'd have to cut it.
wasn't a pull apart challah?
We had a shir on that once, remember that? We had a,
No, I wasn't
we
here.
had a shir on pull apart challahs. Does that count as like a Mishnah? Meir Arik, there's a whole deal.
Yeah,
with
I've heard
that.
that before. So
We had a shir on that once. That might have been before the YouTube live streams. I don't know. In any event, why are we talking about this? Oh, so it could be this is a pragmatic issue.
Right.
You need a knife. Why? Because there's now, if you want the slice, then you can wash on the slice. The point is, if it goes either way, then you should really wash on the whole loaf. It's better halachically. So you need a knife to cut into the loaf. So you need the knife on the table. Period. So you're gonna take it off. Good, you're gonna take it off. But when? Right away. Maybe you want to cut into the bread later. You kind of cut another slice, this and that. So you could just say, I think on a very basic level that the Chachamim said you're going to take it off, but we want to tell you when so that you remember. I mean, it's almost like a mnemonic device. You need a way to remember to take it off. You remember, before we bench, guys, let's clear it. Maybe that's the answer.
It's not something used at that point.
It's not being
When it's
used.
functioning, you need that being,
Oh, yeah.
if
yeah.
you're done with it.
And someone else is going to say, can I have another slice of bread? Oh, sure. Well, let me go get the knife. It doesn't make sense. Like I keep my gun in my holster in case I need it. Okay. The Tamarishan, according to the first reason in the Beis Yosef that it's about the Mizbeach, why aren't we worried about it on Shabbos? Yeshloimar, maybe the reason why we're not worried about Shabbos is the kiva the in boy Mizbeach b'Shabbos. You don't build the Mizbeach on Shabbos.
You use this behavior?
Yes.
So then would that be the same?
It's a
Yeah,
good
there,
kasha.
right.
It's a good kasha. Furthermore, Enechanami, we don't build it on Shabbos. So it's not a Mizbeach anymore. Forget about even if we use it. So now it's not a Mizbeach. It's still a Mizbeach whether you're using it or not. Over Medina Seinu, in our land, in our country, meaning Poland, he's writing, we don't make a distinction Shabbos on the weekday. I'm just very sick. Whether Shabbos, whether weekday, we take it off the table. Or maybe they just cover it. Okay, the next point is something else. Fine. Let's now read the next verse, the Shari Tshuva. Shari Tshuva is of Chaim Mordechai Margolius. He was in Poland, also died 1818. He had a brother, I'm sure maybe he had more than one brother. This was Chaim Mordechai Margolius. I think he was a big misnagid, I think. He had a brother, Ephraim Zalman, who wrote numerous for him, including a very well-known sefer called Shari Ephraim, which is on Hilchos Kiryas HaTorah, considered the ultimate sefer on Hilchos Kiryas HaTorah. That's his brother, Ephraim Zalman. This is Chaim Mordechai, Margolius, which was my mother's maiden name. Don't know if there's any relation. In any event, he writes Hasakin Ayin Ber Hetiv, which we just saw, Ubebirke Yosef, which is the Chidah. Chaim Yosef David Azulai, the great tzaddik. He wrote like 50, 60 Sfarim. Kosav. Shekedumo, Shera B'Shem HaKodesh Moreinu Harav Moshe Cordovero Zal. He saw the name of the Ramak, the great Rav Moshe Cordovero, who preceded the Arizal in Tzfas. She'ein Lachasis B'Shabbos V'Yontiv. No need to cover Shabbos and Yontiv. B'chein, and we're going to see later in the Kaf HaChaim also a little bit more about this. B'chein Re'isi L'moed Zekeni Harav Moreinu Rav Azulai B'Goysav Ksavi Kisveyad. Why not? Why don't you cover the corner of the Mekubalim on Shabbos and Yontiv? If you Shabbos and Yontiv, them is L'olam Haba. Right? Ain't L'olam Haba we call Shabbos. So we say Yom Shekulu Shabbos. So this alludes to L'olam Haba, the world to come. And in the time of the world to come, Shabbos says, "Man, mituka chitzonim." The chitzonim, the external forces. That's a Kabbalistic lingo for forces of negativity or evil. That these evil forces, there's a mituk, there's a sweetening of these evil forces, and bila hamavis lanetzach, and death is swallowed up at that time forever. So we're not, which seems to be going to the second reason, maybe the first reason also. The mizbeach is only for sins. Sins are like malchus, are like death. Maybe it's also the guy who killed himself. So they said so Shabbos and Yontiv you don't need to cover or to remove the knife, because that's a messianic time. the Aruch HaShulchan. We've had numerous times Michal Epstein, 1829 to 1908. Kosval Kadmonim, the early sages, I guess he means Shabbat Haleket probably, writes, Shenegim Lachasas Esakim B'Shas Birkas Hamazon, cover it. No mention of removing, just covering. Cover. Over Shabbos v'Yontif, Lo Yinagul Lachas Heisei. We don't cover it. Why? V'atam, Lafisha Shulchan Doimel Mizbech. The altar is like the table. Your table is like an altar. This is not really about Shabbos. This is just in general the reason, right? He's bringing he's going to bring the two reasons in general. Don't wave something. The table itself brings a lengthening life. So it's not just that the mizbeach, which the table represents, extends one's life through the korbanos, so the person gets kapara. Your table itself, as a table, also extends life. So says the Aruch HaShulchan a geschmack word, Ayadeh achnosas orchim, givaldik. You're welcoming in guests at your table. So it's a mizbeach and it's a table. It's in both ways. It extends one's life through welcoming guests, like Kabbal's Pnei Shechina. It says. It actually says it's greater than Kabbal's Pnei Shechina. U'machaber oven, and Rachnas Orchim, this atones for sins also. Barzel now brings a new point. Barzel ukeichel shel Esav. Barzel iron is the strength that represents Esav. Is al Esav represents the sword. He was a hunter. He was a killer. V'lochin b'Shabbos v'Yontiv ein sotam v'ein pegara. On Shabbos and Yontiv, the koich of Esav doesn't shine. There's no satan. There's no ra. There's no evil on Shabbos and Yontiv. So we're not worried about that koich of Esav on Shabbos, only during the week. Just like the Beis Yosef says, that we do not cover the knife on Shabbos or Yontiv. That was the first reason in Mishpoil HaLekes. Now we go to the second reason. Here he says a tzaddik. Right? The Beis Yosef didn't say that, but it's self-understood. Who else would feel the churban so profoundly, mamish in their kishkes? It must have been a tzaddik. She'omar uvnei Yushalayim. V'nitztar mu'oid al churban Beis Hamikdash, and he was nitztar. He had a lot of pain.
Do you have any sort of davening schedule or anything?
I do, but we're just in the middle of a shir right now.
Oh, so sorry.
It's okay. You can contact later.
Shabbos.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Shabbos, take care. The nitztar mu'oid al churban Beis Hamikdash. V'lokach hasogim v'horigas atzmoi ayin Beis Yosef. That's why they were goyzer only during the weekday. The maise ki hava b'choil hava happened during the week, like the Ber Hativ said. They only were goyzer according to this maise that it was exactly. Skip the next line. Quotes, it says the Gemara did in Shabbos. A certain thing happened, and they were only goyzer. I mean, a certain avera happened. They were only goyzer in the exact same scenario. I mean, we don't need to extend the scenario. Whatever that scenario was is what it was. But then here's the important point that I wanted to get to really in the Aruch HaShulchan, because all this is familiar. We saw this already in the Beis Yosef and the Ber Hativ and so forth. The second last line, V'da, says the Aruch HaShulchan, and no, the Achshav, and he lived again 1829 to 1908. Now, ein regilin lezor bazeh. We're not cautious about this anymore. It's not an issue. You don't have to cover the knife. Not on Shabbos, for sure not. And not during the week either.
According to the second reason, he's saying that we're not concerned that someone in today's day and age is going to be so focused on the Chorban that we may do that. Is it focused on the second reason? Or is it applicable to even the idea of the Mizbeah?
Both reasons. Yeah, he just says the Achshav ein regilin lizor baza. It's not common practice.
He's from Poland?
Huh?
He's from Poland?
Poland.
So the Beretev. I'm sorry, true, but no, the Beretev thing, was it the Taz? He was
They
calling
were
it Taz?
both. Yeah.
They say in our lands, everybody covers it, there's only no Philip and Shabbat and.
So 100 plus years passed,
Okay.
I guess. Ve'ein mechatzin sakin b'shas b'rekas hamazon. We don't cover. So if you go to someone's house and comes benching during the week, because Shabbos, not a problem. Shabbos is Meino Haba. Shabbos, you don't have the Koyach of Esav. Shabbos is a Kabbalistic special power on that day. The Chidah says you don't cover, the Ramak says you don't cover, etc. It's Meino Haba. But during the week, if you have a suitor by someone's house and they don't cover the knife,
Sit away from me.
yeah.
Sit on the other side.
Right, exactly. The Aruch HaShulchan, you don't have to do it. Kaf HaChaim, this is you're gonna like this. You guys are gonna like this. Kaf HaChaim is Sephardi. Moving back to Sephardi, we had a lot of Poland today. Now we're going to Sephardi territory. Baghdad. Rabbi Yaakov Chaim Sofer, or I shouldn't say Sofer, probably, right? It's Sephardi. Sofer. 1870 to 1939 Baghdad, but or 1870 born in Baghdad in Iraq. 1904 he went to Eretz Yisrael. I think he went all over. I don't exactly know, but he settled in Yerushalayim. He may have traveled more as well. I'm not sure. But he settled in Eretz Yisraal. There was a yeshiva, a shul or something. He became the Rav, a yeshiva Mukubolim, something like this. I forget what it's called. What happened? Okay. Oh, first line at the end. Another reason to cover the knife. Mishum de Bebirkas Hamozin, and the Kaf HaChaim, by the way, is some people want to say it's kind of like the Mishnah Brura in the Sephardic world, kind of. Although I see Sephardim today learning Mishnah Brura. I always wonder why. Not Chas v'Shalom, nothing against the Mishnah Brura, but like you guys are Sephardim. I don't know. And then the Kaf HaChaim basically also kind of like he goes on the Shulchan Aruch, top of the page, and then has like notes and rings from all over the place, all different kodesh and a lot of Kabbalah also. So anyway, one of the things we're requesting and benching is that Hashem should rebuild Yerushalayim. Ubeis HaMikdash. Binyan Olam. Should be eternal. Like we learned the Sikha about the third Beis HaMikdash, the first, the second, the third. The Armon al Mishpot Yeshiv and the palace should be in its proper place of judgment and so forth. And concerning that time of the third Beis HaMikdash, which will be when Mashiach comes, in Yemos HaMashiach, Nemar, it says, Lo Yisa Goyal Goy Cheref. One nation will not lift up sword against another nation. So what do you need a sword for? What do you need a knife for? So that's a reason to cover the knife. Because a knife is shayach when Mashiach comes, which is what we're asking in benching. Over Yerushalayim, we're asking for Mashiach to come. But lochin machasin asakim beberkas hamozon lirmois to allude to hint ki be'ezras Hashem yisbarich tiskayim bakashoseino ben Yerushalayim beis hamikdash. Please Hashem, we're hinting. God willing, He's going to fulfill the very thing we're saying right now. Build the Beis Hamikdash, rebuild Yerushalayim. So I'm not going to have. There's no going to be no warfare. There'll be no more war, no more milchama. That's simple. However, here comes the big twist. Everything I just told you up till now is Tamim Pashtim. That's basics. Besharuch HaKodesh, Reb Chaim Vital, Daf Yud, Kosa B'Shem Arizal, which is what he's basically doing. The Reb Chaim Vital is always, he was the Talmud Mufak of the Arizal, right? He studied by the Arizal for 2 years, or I think 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that. Because I think he was, no, other way around. He was in Svas, Chaim Vital, I don't know, he was in Svas already, I think. The Arizal was in Egypt. The Arizal was born in Yerushalayim. He was half Sephardi, half Ashkenazi, the Arizal. His father was Ashkenazi, his mother was Sephardi. But the Arizal was born in Yerushalayim, maybe not, born in Eretz Yisrael, the Arizal. But his father passed away when he was very young. And I guess his mother had a brother in Egypt. So she moved the family to Egypt. Her brother, I think, was wealthy also, so she had financial support there. Her husband passed away. So the Arizal really grew up in Egypt, really. And learned in Egypt, learned Halacha, learned Gemara and Halacha by the Radvaz and the Betzal Ashkenazi with the Shittim Kubetzes. Who do you learn Kabbalah by? Don't really know. I don't know. himself, maybe. Anyway, then I think he had a dream. I wasn't there. I think he had a dream that there was a Yid in Tzvas named Chaim Vital, or maybe someone told him. I don't know. To look up these stories, I'm not sure. I'm giving it with lots of vague details. And he had to go to Tzvas to teach Chaim Vital Kabbalah. Anyway, so it says over there, someone whose neshama is from the root, is connected to Kayin. Remove, not cover. If your neshama is from the spiritual root of the neshama of Kayin, you must be extremely careful. Get it off the table. Covering it is not sufficient. Why? Because if your neshama is from Kayin, yeah.
How do you know if you're from?
Oh, good question. Hold that thought. Excellent question. Hold that thought. That's what it says in the writings of Chaim Vital, in the name of the Arizal, that weapons belong to Kayin. Spiritual, physically and spiritually speaking. So if your neshama is rooted in the neshama of Kain, we're going to get to your question in a second. Excellent question. Then you better get the knife off the table because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen when you're benching. We don't know. We don't know who's in the shamas from the Shorosh Kain, and who on the other hand is in the shamas from Hevel. We don't know. Why the fish is Arvan and Tzutzin? All the sparks, meaning the neshamos, have become a big chulent. And therefore, are you from the neshama of Kain or not? I don't know. So it's a suffix. It's maybe a suffix pekuach nefesh, maybe. Someone's going to die. It might be you. Someone's going to die. There's a knife on the table. Therefore, since we don't know where your neshama is from, maybe from Kain, maybe from Hevel, so says the Arizal, but tzrichin hakoil, everyone, maybe you're from Kain, I don't know. Everyone must lahasid asakin ala shulchan b'shas berkas hamozin v'loy dai b'kisui yu'uyin sham. It's not enough to cover the knife; you have to remove it. Yeah.
Does that mean that Saleh from earlier had to have been from Kayan or not necessarily?
That's a great question. I have no idea. I don't know.
So according to
Probably.
according to some of the other opinions, because you're doing like Uvenay, Binyan, Beis Mikdash, right?
Yeah.
So it makes sense why the knife would be covered or removed or whatever before benching. According to this interpretation, where you have a legitimate concern because you may be from Kayan and have that piece, why is it specific to removing it before benching and not immediately after cutting the challah?
You have the same question?
Yeah, the same thing was from before. Why?
Similar. It's a good question. I don't know. But it could be that we're not expecting, just because you may have a neshama that's somehow spiritually rooted or connected to the neshama of Kain, we're not expecting you to go on a killing spree. We're not expecting that. That's not normal. But we want to be careful. Or maybe it's a 2025 word. We don't want to trigger you. When we were kids, nobody spoke about triggers. We don't want to trigger you. A potential trigger is Uvnei Yerushalayim. Now, in theory, could the person just stand up and start killing everybody around them? God forbid. Of course, but come on, it's crazy. That's too far gone of a concern. We're not going to actually worry about something like that. So still, what the Arizal is saying really is completely in line with everything we've said in Kabbalah, in Halacha up till now. It is saying it's dafka, at least according to the second reason, dafka Maisa, and the Maisa happened in a specific time, on a specific day, and it was connected to Uvnei Yerushalayim. So we don't need to extend that to the rest of the meal either. Might something happen? Sure. But anyway. Based on this reasoning, lo yesh chiluk doesn't matter Shabbos and Yontif. According to this, there's no heter to leave the knife. Forget about covering it. That you can't do at all. Covering is no good, according to this. To remove it from the table, weekday and Shabbos, Because the whole word before about Shabbos that I was suggesting, maybe because there's not so much mourning on Shabbos, you're not going to be so upset when you say V'nei Yerushalayim. Even if you do feel bad a little bit, you're not going to feel too bad. Or maybe the second thing about the Mizbeach, not building it, which I don't exactly understand what that means, because even though you don't build it, it's still a Mizbeach. Okay, sort of I don't exactly understand that. But according to this, he says, your neshama is what it is. That doesn't change on Shabbos. I mean, you get an extra neshama Shabbos. He didn't seem to be concerned with that. So according to the Kaf HaChaim, should remove your knife. Covering it is not sufficient. Remove it on Shabbos and certainly during the weekdays. When are you going to do that? Again, we have a reminder. We have a mnemonic device. Do it before you bench.
It's also like you said, they didn't have knives, like you think of today. Like they cut the challah, they had the knife and they used it then and maybe here and there. I mean, today you think of it, you can't compare. Everyone has knives at the table, the whole,
Right.
they're using the whole time. It's a little bit different. Probably even worse, they probably take all the knives. I think you're supposed to take all the knives off the table.
I think that some want to say, I don't have the sources here. I saw somewhere, some want to say that no, it's really just a knife that's either it's just a knife that's cutting the bread, dafka the bread knife, or it's like a sharp knife. Or you have a butter knife, or you like the knives we eat with typically color. It's not sharp. Your knife is not your knife that whether you're using with your fork, it's not sharp. It's not.
Right, unless you're using steak
A
knife.
steak knife is sharp. Okay, so maybe that you should remove, according to Kaf HaChaim. Okay.
Right.
Let's take a look at the Mishnah Brura. I think we know, but his name was Yisrael Meir Kagan, Poland, 1838 to 1933. Sometimes you hear the years, you're like, 1930s, it's like not that long. You hear Shibbolei Haleket was in the 13th century. Okay, that's the 1200s. That's a long time ago. 1933, that's a long ago. Okay. Let's take a look at the Mishnah Brura. L'chasois hasakin. So it's obviously going in the same exact siman in the Shulchan Aruch, siman Kuf Pei, and he's commenting on the second source we saw in the Shulchan Aruch, the top of the previous page. L'chasois hasakin, to cover the knife, and he says as follows: Bebeis Yosef shnei taimim. We're doing chazara. When you learn these halachas farm, you do a lot of chazara. Bebeis Yosef shnei taimim. Echad, first reason, the barzel makatzer yimei adam. Because iron shortens man's life. It doesn't make sense. Doesn't belong on the table. The table's a mizbeach, which we get kapara through that. We extends our life. The Torah says, "Don't wave." We saw that pasuk, I think, in the base place of also, right? Don't wave iron or steel, whatever, over the mizbeach. Here, Mishnah Berurah, Gishma, he spells it out. And I think Nir, you made this point before also. When should you remove the knife? You're done eating. And then what do you do with the knife? What does he say? It says cover. It doesn't say remove, not like the Kaf HaChaim. Mechasa sakin, which is like the Shulchan Aruch. That's the pashtus of the Shulchan Aruch. Even though the Beis Yosef did bring, I think, one at the end of the Shibbolei Haleket to remove it, but the Beis Yosef himself in the Shulchan Aruch says cover. Kaf HaChaim says take it off because it has to do with the spiritual idea, the root of your neshama. We don't mess around with that. But now we come to the Mishnah Berurah, just cover it. When should you cover it? When you're finished eating and ready to bench. Makes sense. That was the first reason of the Beis Yosef. He doesn't call him a tzaddik here. The Aruch HaShulchan called him a tzaddik. He just says a person, but that person was a tzaddik. Because read the Mishnah Berurah after the Aruch HaShulchan. He read the Aruch HaShulchan, I'm sure. But okay. Stabbing himself in the guts. Oh, remove it.
So which one is it?
I think the pashtus, like the Shulchan Aruch says, cover.
Which is the second reason, we should remove it.
Or the second reason, remove it. But the Shulchan Aruch, the source number 2, which should I should really label, I should number the sources, be easier. Source number 2, which is the top left source on the first page. No, let's go back to always have to anchor everything. Let's go always back to the Shulchan Aruch. Noyagim lachasois hasakin, cover it, b'shat berkas hamozin, v'nogu shaloi lachasoisoi. It says twice, cover and don't cover on Shabbos. The pashtus covering is enough. If you want to go according to Kaf HaChaim, you're worried about the Kabbalah ideas, good, so take it off the table. The next Mishnah Berurah, we don't cover it on Shabbos. Look in the Achronim, we discuss why we're not makpid on Shabbos and Yontiv, which we discussed a little bit. Now, finally, let's bring it around to the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe was born in 1745, died in 1812. He was a direct descendant of the Maharal of Prague, who also had not just a descendant biologically, but had a big influence on him spiritually as well. One of the major Sfarim that had a huge influence on the Alter Rebbe was the Maharal's. Well, not Sfarim. Maharal wrote many Sfarim. The Maharal's Sfarim, it wasn't one particular sefer, to my knowledge, was many of them had a great influence on Alter Rebbe. The tradition is on the cover page of the Tanya, which, by the way, the Tanya will meet the Shabbos afternoon at 5 o'clock, men and women. Didn't meet last week because of Erev Tisha B'Av. On the cover page of the Tanya, he writes that it's collected from Sfarim v'Seifrim. And the Sfarim doesn't tell you which Sfarim it is, but one of the traditions amongst Chassidim is that amongst the Sfarim are the Sfarim of the Maharal and others. Okay. So now we're going to have some more Chazal. Now here's how the Alter Rebbe wraps it up. We cover the knife. He again writes cover. Cover the knife before benching. Why? Shulchan is like an altar. Don't wave iron over it. Iron shortens life. Lengthens life. So the knife doesn't belong on the table. The table is like the mizbech. Furthermore, the table itself extends one's life. We saw this already in Aruch HaShulchan. But Aruch HaShulchan is after the Alter Rebbe. Aruch HaShulchan had a son who wrote Chumash Teir Tmimim. You maybe heard of that Chumash before. And he wrote a sefer called I have it in my house next door called Forget. And he writes stories about his father, the Aruch HaShulchan, the great guy in the Aruch HaShulchan. By the way, if you ever want to get an overview of an entire sugi in Halacha, the Aruch HaShulchan goes mamish to the Gemara, to the Tur, but seriously, mamish goes to the entire sugya and brings his own chidushim, obviously fascinating, phenomenal. Doesn't need me to say it's a phenomenal sefer, but anyway. So in this sefer, Aruch HaShulchan was not exactly known as a chassid. Let's just say he was not known as a chassid. But his son writes that my father went to the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Rebbe Lubavitch, who gave him smicha. But Yesh Omrim that that's completely not true at all, never happened. And that his son wrote it, that he was trying to make his father look more favorable in the eyes of the Chassidim, that the Chassidim should accept the psak of his father, the Aruch HaShulchan, which was likely never to happen because the Chassidim had the psak of the Alter Rebbe. So it's no offense to any other sefer, but the Chassidim followed the Alter Rebbe. Nothing against the Aruch HaShulchan, God forbid, nothing against the Mishnah Berurah, God forbid, just we followed the Alter Rebbe. In any event. So he says, it's not just that the Mizbeach, I mean, come on, your table is not a Mizbeach. Your table is doimel Mizbeach. It's like the Mizbeach. And the Mizbeach extends one's life. Says the Alter Rebbe, and we saw this idea already in Aruch HaShulchan as well. Shulchan, the table itself, atones for one's sins. How so? Great is the power of legima, a tasting. a coffee, a drink, something, a mazonis, a full meal, whatever it means. Great is the koich of logim of having something to eat. Shemasha Shechina brings the presence of the Shechina. You say bracha, sit together with other Yidden, Avos Yisrael. This brings the Shechina closer. Okay. So it's important to cover the knife. Important to cover the knife. However, in many places, it's interesting. See, some places they do cover, like in Baghdad. Presumably, if you lived in Baghdad, Kaf Chaim was your Rav. Maybe the Ben Ish Chai. I didn't look it up. I don't know if the Ben Ish Chai mentions this. I didn't look it up. The Kaf Chaim. So in many places they don't cover Shabbos and Yom. Some places they do. We saw this idea already also. During the weekday they covered the power of Esav, the power of anger, of violence, of etc. With Shabbos and Yom ain't Satan a pegada, but on Shabbos and Yom there's no Satan, there's no rat eating on Shabbos and Yom. Going back all the way back to the basis. The minhag is we don't cover it on Shabbos and Yom Tov. So, whatever you do, you're covered. No pun intended. I didn't mean to say that. Whatever you do, you're covered. Whether you cover the knife, whether you remove the knife, if you don't cover it, you don't remove it, you have upon him to a lie. Questions or comments? I feel like we just scratched the surface. There's probably more to talk about, no? Questions, comments? You look like you have a question and a comment.
What do you, well, yes, but what do you do?
Yeah.
I have, my question is, what do you do? Do you cover it?
What do I do?
Yeah.
Does it matter what I do?
No, I'm just saying, like, which one do you go, like, what's your opinion?
Friend of mine has a knife, challah knife, that folds. So someone asked me, what do you need it for? When do you use a challah knife other than on Shabbos? On Shabbos, you don't have to cover it. Unless you're holding by the Kaf HaChaim, Al Pi Kabbalah, you should.
Remove it.
Remove it. Okay, so here you close it, that's like covering it, right? I guess. What do? Shabbos and Yom Tov, you don't have to cover it. Shabbos, the power of Shabbos is Me'enon Haba, reminds you of Mashiach. We're asking to Hashem, please Hashem, send Mashiach, build the third Beis HaMikdash. These knives are going to be nothing then. I'm not worried about it. Did that answer the question, or did I evade the question?
I don't know.
Next, what's the next point or question?
My comment was that if we usually follow the Shulchan Aruch, then how can we, well, it's more like a question, then how could we say that, oh, you have someone to rely on if that's not who we follow by? We don't follow on the person that allows us to do something else.
Okay, it's a very good question. It's a very good question. So, first of all, you're right. If the Shulchan Aruch says so, it's fine. If it says Shulchan Aruch, so you're good. But if you open up a Shulchan Aruch, it's like opening up a Gemara. Right? In the Gemara, you have the Gemara in the middle, and around it is the commentaries. Rashi tells you what it means. Tosfos explains how it does or how it doesn't contradict another Gemara that you learned that it's a contradiction. No, Tosfos explains not a contradiction. So Shulchan Aruch also is Shulchan Aruch in the middle, and around it the Gemara. Avram has, depending what Shulchan Aruch, other Be'er Hativ number 1, Be'er Hativ number 2, different Be'er Hativs, different commentaries, depending on which volume of Shulchan Aruch you're looking at. What are they doing there? Shulchan Aruch says, well, sometimes it's not so clear what the Shulchan Aruch means. Sometimes there's a dispute, a debate. What exactly is the pshat in the words of the Shulchan Aruch itself? Kind of like a Mishnah, right? You learn a Mishnah. What do you need the Gemara for? The Mishnah already said. No, Gemara is explaining the Mishnah, trying to figure it out. What's it saying? That you have a Rashi. What do you need Rashi for? What do you need all the Meforshim for, etc. Secondly, so that's one thing, is that sometimes it's not so clear in the Shulchan Aruch, at least to us. So we need Magen Avram, the Taz, the whoever it is, the Shach, Taz, whoever it is. Also, sometimes things get updated per se. I don't mean God forbid that Shulchan Aruch is ever old. It's never old. Sometimes things become other issues arise, or other things come up that never came up in the past. That was one of the reasons, in fact, that the Alter Rebbe, the Shulchan Aruch Harav, the last source we had, was told by his Rebbe, the Mezritcher Maggid, to write the Shulchan Aruch. What do you need it for? You have a Shulchan Aruch. What are you writing a new one for? Well, you don't like the old one. God forbid. God forbid to say so. The old one is perfect. But in the 300 some years or 250 some years that had passed, there were updates, so to speak, new scenarios, new applications, new things arose. Or think about it in terms of like modern day medical halacha. Where do you find many issues that are medical halacha today come up, many medical issues? Where are they in Shulchan Aruch? Answer is they're not. But they are. You have to find the precedent for them in Shulchan Aruch. That's what any posek does. They look for the precedent in the Shulchan Aruch and other commentaries. So came the time of the Alter Rebbe, the Shulchan Aruch Harav, and it was already some 250 years or so, 250, 300 years, whatever it was, after the Shulchan Aruch, and there were updates that needed to be made, so to speak. Not, God forbid, to negate anything, chas v'sholom, but to bring it to more current time. We have the same thing nowadays as well. We don't have the Shulchan Aruch, but we have poskim that teach us, how do you deal with this scenario? How do you deal with that scenario? These things didn't exist 100 years ago, certainly not 500 years ago. So bottom line is, if as long as you, when you're learning halacha, I'm just telling you how I understand it. As long as you always bring it back to the Shulchan Aruch, always come back to the Shulchan Aruch. What does the Shulchan Aruch say? So in a sense, you're always going to be good. You're always safe. Always safe. Anchor it in the Shulchan Aruch. You can't go wrong. That being said, we have to know how to apply things. What are the so and again, you have the Kaf HaChaim. The Kaf HaChaim brings in Kabbalah. Okay, so there's other factors. Some people are very concerned about his Kabbalistic ideas, so they're going to take the knife off. Good, so take the knife off. Notice also, does the Shulchan Aruch say you don't take the knife off? No, it doesn't say don't take it off. It just says we're accustomed to cover it. You don't need to cover it on Shabbos. It doesn't say you're not allowed to cover it on Shabbos. It doesn't say don't take it. You want to take it off, so take it off. You're worried about Kabbalah? Good, so take it off. Take it. Did that answer the question a little bit? Okay. What are you gonna? What do you do? Yes, but why do? What do you do?
From now on,
Yeah.
take it off.
Are you worried about You're worried about the Kaf HaChaim, eh?
I'm
You're a
not
chassid
worried
with the-
about it.
You're
just-
not worried, God forbid. You're a chassid with the Kaf HaChaim. You're starting chassid with the Kaf HaChaim.
It'll take 2
A lot of
seconds.
kind,
It's
a lot of
interesting.
The kind energy.
That was interesting because I know people more Spartan that you go, they don't use a knife when they cut. I mean, on Shabbos, they're obviously maybe during the week, but they break it off. They don't cut with a knife. They'll break the pieces.
And they
So then you
throw
don't
it.
have to-
They also
yeah, they-
throw it. Ashman will do that.
Right.
Don't do it. That could maybe be another shir, another week. Cutting the challah versus tearing and throwing versus passing. And the Bichlal says you're not supposed to, even those who pass,
But even
not supposed to put,
Broncos, they
not
said
supposed to
they
put it in
wouldn't-
someone's hand. You're supposed to put it down. You should
Right,
pick it up.
supposed to put it down.
Only the slice from the challah. That's a separate issue. Okay, any other comments or questions? I see we reached our hour. We just did halacha today, but we threw in some Kabbalah. It's not to say, okay, we threw in some Kabbalistic ideas. Anything else? Okay, Yeshua for coming. Hope to see you next time.